Hello, welcome to History of Jazz Week 1. So this is from John Swed's Jazz 101, a complete guide to learning and loving jazz. Swed is an excellent writer and researcher. Great biography of Sun Ra, Space is the Place. I encourage you to check out John Swed's writing as the semester goes on. I wanted to cite what he wrote about Sonny Rollins' Autumn Nocturne from our Week 1 YouTube playlist, the first of the 3 videos. He writes, Rollins is a man whose art thrives on an audience's reaction. And this recording from the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco in 1978 is especially inspired. Autumn Nocturne, a song seldom sung because of the difficulty of its angular melody, is here taken at full tilt, beginning with a long obligato introduction which takes up over half of the 6.5 minutes of the record. He throws everything he knows into it, quoting rhythm and blues licks, 19th century salon favorites, and pop songs. When he finally begins the melody, he's been withholding, and the rhythm section joins him. He doubles and triples the time, skating past the song, drifting back to it, then breaking loose from it again, as if there were something unbearably difficult about facing it head-on. Close to free jazz, close to barroom rhythm and blues, this is Rollins spreading fire through an audience. And if it's not his most coherent and compositional solo, it is certainly one of his most exciting and gives us a snapshot of a man racing to keep up with his ideas. Okay, so some thoughts about what Swed is writing here in light of the video that you are watching, that you are listening to of Rollins, and then first unaccompanied and then with his group playing Autumn Nocturne from 1978. Okay, so a man whose art thrives on an audience's reaction. Well, this is an interesting entry into our course, right? Because what that is implying is that the music that is being played by Rollins in this instance is better because there are people there to hear it, right? So this is tells us that this is a live music. Not just that this recording is a live music, but that jazz is a live music. It's a recorded music too, of course. But its history and its perhaps greatest power is found in live settings when an audience is witnessing the live performance of jazz music. Many things that means. We'll talk about it. In 1978 is important to note because, why is this the first thing we're listening to? This is much later into Rollins' career. Sonny Rollins is one of the innovators, as we'll see, and great stylists of bebop and of hard bop and these movements in jazz from much earlier than 1978, from the late 1940s in the case of Rollins, the beginning of Rollins' career, and the 1950s and the 1960s are like the prime time decades for Rollins. He's been great ever since and continues to be throughout this, and in fact he's still alive and is jazz's elder statesman, older than Wayne Shorter. There are other musicians in their 90s. Rollins is in his late 80s, but he's the greatest, oldest still alive. Roy Haynes, the drummer, is two. There isn't one. He's one of the handful of the giants that walk the earth, as you'll hear me describe, at least in the case of musicians from those eras who are still alive. It says next, a song seldom sung because of the difficulty of its angular melody. Okay, well, in jazz, what do you think of first? Do you think of instrumental music without a singer? A saxophone, a trumpet, a piano, a bass player, a drummer, other instruments, so to speak. But do you think of a vocalist, right? Swed is saying that it's seldom sung because it's hard to sing. An angular melody means, melody is the contour, a horizontal axis, let's say, of music making, of sound making. So you sound a note, and then the next note you sound, that horizontal distance that's a melody. Even 2 notes is a melody. Even the same note twice is the beginning of a melody. So he's saying that the melody that Rollins is playing, as you hear when you listen, goes up and it goes down across registers, incorporating all kinds of techniques into the sound manipulation, the way Rollins gets sound from his saxophone. All these things, and spikiness, angularity, again, wide intervallic distances, but also the way he's attacking notes, etc. All the above. It's not just saying that Rollins' approach is why it's hard to sing. It's because the melody notes themselves are already angular, just the notes on the page. Not the way they're interpreted by somebody, because you could try a legato version of it, but the implication is that for a singer, it's hard to jump those high distances, whatever it is. I'm not a vocalist, obviously. I'm a drummer. I sing, though, too. But anyway, this is not an easy song to sing. And so very often in jazz, you have these a history of instrumental music. And of course, there's also important history of jazz voice, and we'll talk a lot about it. And really, a lot of the history, seems to me, of instrumental jazz is instruments trying to play their version of the human voice on whatever their instrument happens to be, whether it's a saxophone or a trumpet or even a drum set player or a bass player or a harpist or any instrument that happens to be in a context of an ensemble. They're trying to voice, in some cases, literally mimic a human voice, as we will hear with Lester Young and John Coltrane, and how Lester Young and Billie Holiday sound similar, or how Louis Armstrong both plays the trumpet and also sings, but is singing when he's playing the trumpet. This happens to be Autumn Nocturne is not a easy song, and that also speaks to the age of pop music that these songs were written in. This, again, this recording's from '78, but this is a standard from the first half of the 20th century. At which time, for several decades, when increasingly popular songs that everybody knew, were harmonically sophisticated, meaning the vertical concept of a song, the way it's structured, so the way the horizontal melody, those notes where they relate to vertically, like sort of the supports that hold up a bridge, we can describe as the harmonic motion of a song, and the simultaneous sounding of notes. And how they change is when we refer to changes in a song, the harmonic change from one harmonic center to another, whether it's 3 notes sounded at the same time, or 4, or 5, or 6, or they're all unison, even as a unison harmony. I mean, simultaneous verticality is what we're referring to when we talk about harmony. And this is simply a complicated song harmonically, in the way that pop songs, since rock and roll, since the 50s and beyond, they're sophisticated in other ways, but not in the same kind of chromatic, using all 12 notes within a key, possibilities in the melodic and harmonic construction that earlier pop songs were. And this is what Sonny Rollins is improvising on. This is what Coleman Hawkins is improvising on. This is what Bill Evans is improvising on our other videos, as we'll talk about momentarily. So it says he throws everything he knows into it, quoting rhythm and blues licks, 19th century salon favorites, and pop songs. So here we have 3 kinds of quotes, if you will. What Swed means by he throws everything he knows into it is Rollins is improvising. He's spontaneously composing. He's making up stuff on the spot. And what is he referencing? Rollins loved to reference. Jazz musicians often love to reference, at least iconically, pre-existing materials in their improvised solos, even little nuggets of them. It's a sort of a trope, right? No one is better than Rollins at that. What is he quoting? Rhythm and blues licks. Okay, rhythm and blues, as in the music of African American, particularly African American extraction. It is both of African origin, antiguamente, old school, but it is the rhythm and blues is the popular music mid-20th century articulation of the African American experience in the United States of America. So not even necessarily the Americas, but very particularly African United States of American entity, the rhythm and blues. And we'll talk about rhythm and blues and how some jazz is also rhythm and blues, and how they diverge, how they're similar. What else was he quoting? 19th century salon favorites. 19th century, right? So he's quoting salon favorites, salon small rooms where there would be concert played, amateur and professional, right? Popular songs from 100 years ago. Stephen Foster's Camptown Races, or whatever. Check out these, if you Google 19th century American pop song and see what comes up. Listen to what those sound like. Rollins is also quoting that in addition to Google 1955 rhythm and blues on YouTube and see what you get, James Brown and the like, and many much before Brown, etc. Right? He's quoting this diverse range of materials and pop songs of his day too. All that stuff is germane to Rollins' solo ideas. When he finally begins the melody, right after all this soloing, we're talking about all this quoting, all the improvising, he's been withholding the melody he's been withholding, right? That means he's been playing unaccompanied. He hasn't been, no one else is waiting for this. They're just letting Rollins do his thing. This long, improvised declaration is a central experience in taking in jazz, is listening to one person declaim with support of a rhythm section or not. Or in Rollins' case, and he's master at it, as are so many, but he's particularly master in it, these kind of long, an hour long solo statements unaccompanied, right? Finally, the band comes in and says the rhythm section joins him. The rhythm section, well, he's been playing rhythms already, unaccompanied, but the rhythm section, of course, consists of the drums, we would think, right? Also the bass player, and whatever chording instrument, most iconically a piano. So the piano, bass, and drums come in and join him, doubling and tripling the time, meaning if the time is here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, doubling it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, tripling it, like not only lifting the intensity, but lifting the rhythmic density, accentuating it, exciting the music, right? Making it hot, bringing it to life. You can also make music exciting when you slow it down, but think about the natural sort of dynamics and cadence, right? Going up and up and up. Rollins builds. They all help him build. It goes. Says he's skating past the song, drifting back to it, breaking loose from it again, as if there was something unbearably difficult about facing it head on. Close to free jazz, close to barroom rhythm and blues, this is Rollins spreading fire through an audience. Okay, so skating past the song, drifting back to it, breaking loose. Everybody else is articulating the meter, however loosely. Not really loosely at all, pretty tight and snapping, but, the drummer's going ding, chicka-ding, 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 chicka, 1, 2, 3, 4, ding, chicka-ding, playing the beat, accentuating the beat, pushing the beat. The bass player's going doom, 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 playing quarter notes, walking the bass line, pushing the music. The piano player, bing, 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 comping, accompanying, playing complementary things to what they're all abating him, right? He is not necessarily beholden to that kind of metrical articulation of the time, of music moving in time. The accompanists are helping him do that. He's floating in and out of it. He was doing that unaccompanied too. He also sometimes really hits them right on whatever the rhythm is and plays it with them, so to speak. But he's also skating, floating, commenting, right? He's improvising. The roles, think about the hierarchies of that, right? These people are holding things down for him to explore. They're also free, but not free to skate and, what else does he say? Break loose and drift back. We'll talk about when rhythm sections did that and when the jazz ensemble hierarchies start to change. We'll hear that, for instance, with Bill Evans this week. It says close to free jazz, close to barroom rhythm. We already know about rhythm and blues, right? A barroom rhythm and blues, this kind of honking, iconic, again, tenor saxophone. Close to free jazz. Free, like what? You don't get any money for it? That might be true, but also meaning what? Jazz, as it was termed by critics and audiences and somewhat pejoratively or celebratedly or loadedly always, we'll talk about it. Free jazz meaning jazz without these kind of strict adherences to hierarchical roles. It's almost that. It almost breaks free of all that. Kind of is just barely holding together. He's veering back and forth from abandoned formlessness, so to speak, or spontaneous creation of form to, more visceral, so to speak. What does visceral mean? Rhythm and blues. He's spreading fire. This is, again, dynamically on the rise, on the rise, on the rise. And if it's not, Swed concludes, his most coherent and compositional solo, it's certainly one of his most exciting, and gives us a snapshot of a man racing to keep up with his ideas. Okay, if it's not his most coherent and compositional solo, well, he had a lot of coherent and compositional solos. He played thousands of them, and he played thousands of solos that were both coherent and compositional and probably had moments that were not. These are subjective things Swed is talking about somewhat journalistically. Doesn't have to be talking about it in a quantitative, measured way. It's not really what you can't, right? So, nonetheless, he's saying that he's valorizing it for its coherence and for its unity of ideas. Whether you make it up in the moment or you made it up before and you're playing it and it's a loose version of, or whatever the specifics, right? If you're quoting from whatever. The point is that he feels like there's a sense of internal form to it and strength as a result. Okay. It says to get in the last line, it gives us a snapshot of a man racing to keep up with his ideas. So in this audio moment, it's an aural snapshot, right? That we hear. 5 minutes or so frozen in time. or not frozen, a moving 5 minutes, but etched forever, thank goodness, in recorded history. So that means we can study what we're hearing, right? Racing to keep up with his ideas, Rollins, as we can hear from everything spiraling out of his saxophone, had a lot of ideas. And so the implication is that this is already 1978, decades after he's been racing to keep up his ideas already for a 30-year career. He still is today. Google Sonny Rollins, not 2018 or 2017, and there are interviews with videos of him talking. And check out the Yoda-esque sight that there is to behold. Sonny Rollins is a dinosaur walking on the earth still. Not that he's old, but that he is timeless, is what I mean. He's not from 65 million years back, but he's still racing to keep up his ideas, even today, in an incredible way. And there's something to be said about Rollins' longevity as not the ultimate example of the jazz searcher, but as one of the seminal ones. So that's a video about Sonny Rollins' Autumn Nocturne. Enjoy it. Follow discussion board posts and response ideas based on what I've said here. Let it help you explore the internet, this open educational resource, right? I'm sharing some ideas from a printed text, but we are now together going to cite directly from sources we find on different web pages. Please try and avoid, of course, as usual, should go without saying, Wikipedia and sites that are not locked, right? And try and avoid biographical hagiography. Try and avoid, in your discussion posts and responses, just rehashing biographical details of Rollins' life. Try and talk about the music you're hearing and the person that's creating that music and the environment they're creating it in. Okay, so that's week 1 video about Sonny Rollins' Autumn Nocturne.